Today's major news from Korea. Hyundai Rotem signed a contract to export K2, the main tank product, to overseas for the first time. This export is worth a total of 4.5 trillion won, and it is a very large contract that is about 1.5 times the annual sales of Hyundai Rotem. It has been difficult to enter overseas markets due to high technological barriers and political interests in each country, but interest is gathering whether this opportunity will bring steady results. On the 29th, Hyundai Rotem announced that it had signed an export contract for the K2 tank worth 4.49 trillion won with the Polish Armed Forces Agency at the military base in Morągie, Poland. This contract is an execution contract of the basic contract for exporting 1,000 K2 tanks signed with Poland in July, and contains detailed conditions for the first 180 units for delivery in case of emergency. This K2 tank export is the first case of exporting finished tanks from Korea. In 1976, Hyundai Rotem was designated as a first-class defense contractor for tank production and started to develop Korean tanks in earnest. The K2 is currently being used as the main battle tank for the South Korean military. Hyundai Rotem has been preparing for export with the announcement of the Polish military modernization project. When Poland requested the world's leading defense companies to participate in the project to replace its old tank, Hyundai Rotem also proposed the K2PL, a Polish customized model, by renovating the existing K2 tank in 2020. Earnings from this project are also expected to improve significantly. After making hundreds of billions of dollars in losses and entering an emergency management system, Hyundai Rotem has maintained a profitable business for 3 years in a row and is showing a clear recovery. An official from Hyundai Rotem said that this export of the K2 tank is the first case of exporting tanks in Korea, and it is an opportunity to be internationally recognized for the excellence of the Korean Army's main tank, and it is expected that it will serve as a foundation for Korea to leap into a world-class defense exporting country. Minister of Justice Han Dong-hoon made it clear that he would do his part as Justice Minister and stand up to the constitutional process in response to the impeachment theory raised by some members of the Democratic Party of Korea. Regarding the Democratic Party's complete deprivation of the prosecution's investigation power, Minister Han said that it is the state's duty to prevent thugs from harassing ordinary people by manipulating the stock market behind corrupt politicians and pretending to be businessmen. When asked if the new Democratic Party leadership would attack the Justice Department's inspector uniform, the enforcement ordinance that restores the prosecutor's right to investigate, he replied that what the Justice Department is doing to protect the people from crime. At the general meeting of the Special Committee on Budget and Settlement of the National Assembly on the same day, Minister Han said that the question of Rep. Kong Min-guk about the power of the people on complete inspection should be focused on whether the people are being harmed and whether the people are being protected from crime, rather than the issue of interagency authority. In that regard, it is clear that there was a large gap, and he said that he was empirically grasping it. At the same time, he emphasized that the enforcement ordinance of the inspector uniform was enacted to protect the public from crime within the scope of the mandate of the amended law, and emphasized that the enforcement ordinance is one of the best ways to make the enforcement of the law more transparent and objective and open. The Democratic Party is even calling for the impeachment of a minister over the Ministry of Justice's revision of the Inspector's Uniform Enforcement Decree in response to the Inspection Waiver Act. The argument is that the Minister of Justice, who took the lead in revising the Enforcement Decree, which is a subordinate statute, to nullify the Inspection and Obstruction Act, which is a higher-level corporation, should be impeached. Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency Commissioner Kim Kwang-ho said that the investigation into the alleged acceptance of sexual favors by Lee Jun-sok, former leader of the People's Power Party, will be dealt with in accordance with the law and principles without any shake. Commissioner Kim said at a press conference that day, saying that it is impossible in my life to judge outside the law and conscience while serving as the head of a law enforcement agency. Commissioner Kim said that there was and will not be any contact with key officials on the side of President Yoon Suk-yeol in relation to the investigation. Previously, former party leader Lee Jun-sok raised suspicions that President Yoon Suk-yeol had intervened in the police investigation into him. The police investigation into former party leader Lee Jun-sok is coming to an end. The police have completed the 6th investigation against IKIST CEO Kim Song-jin, who claims to have provided sexual favors. Commissioner Kim said that he will make a decision on whether to summon former party leader Lee Jun-sok based on the results of the fact-finding and legal review. Former party leader Lee Jun-sok is accused of receiving sexual favors from Kim at a hotel in Useonggu, Daejeon, on July 11 and August 15, 2013. When allegations of sexual favors surfaced in December of last year, Kim Cheol-jeon, former chief of political affairs, is also being accused of trying to destroy evidence. Rep. Seo Byung-soo, who served as the chairman of the People's Strength National Committee, said on the 29th that he had no intention of responding to the party's request to convene the National Committee for the establishment of a new emergency response committee. Rep. Seo told the media that he thought the court's decision should be respected and that he had no intention of responding to the request to convene the National Committee. The People's Power held a meeting of the Emergency Response Committee presided over by floor leader Kwon Song-dong on the same day and decided to launch a new non-captain before Chuseok. Accordingly, a standing committee and a national committee should be held to revise the party constitutional rules, but as Rep. Seo, who served as the chairman of the National Committee, expressed a negative position. A sudden variable in the launch of a new non-captainer has emerged. Rep. CO said he made this statement during a phone call with floor leader Kwon Song-dong this morning. Rep. CO said that the fundamental problem is now a conflict between Chairman Lee Jun-sok and the so-called key officials, Yoon Sok-yeol, and that it is a more reasonable way to have someone meet and voluntarily resign Lee Jun-sok while proceeding with the procedure legally. Representatives Yoon Sang-hyeon, Yu Uidong, and Choi Jae-hyung of People's Power argued that the current party's crisis was in fact triggered by the party's leadership and that floor leader Kwon Song-dong should resign himself in order to normalize the party. After Ho Young-ju, chairman of the Emergency Response Committee, suspended the execution of duties, floor leader Kwon is protesting against the decision to take over as acting chairman of the Emergency Response Committee. At a press conference at the National Assembly today, they announced that they should withdraw their position of maintaining the Emergency Response Committee and elect a new floor leader in accordance with the party constitution and bylaws so that the floor leader should act as acting. In particular, he pointed out that the party's decision after discussion on Saturday was wrong about the General Meeting of the National Assembly, which decided to form a new Emergency Response Committee on the 27th. He then pointed out that the party leadership's position was filled with the set answer of maintaining the Non-Gender Response Committee, and pointed out that the decision made by the party leadership was very far from the core of the court's injunction decision. They said that if the people's power continues to be separated from the people's hearts and is consistent with a decision such as last Saturday's parliamentary meeting, it is an act that kills politics, kills democracy, kills the party, and kills the president. He emphasized the need to face the essence of the problem and choose a degree that is not a trick. Rep. Yoon said after the press conference that the formation of a new non-captain is a trick, and a new floor leader must be elected to form the leadership. He emphasized that only then can the problem be solved. He continued, saying that if a new floor leader takes office, a new Supreme Committee can be formed as an acting party representative. Did. Rep. Choi also said that it is undesirable for the party to continue to be in chaos ahead of an important state audit, and that a political decision must be made as soon as possible. Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb met with Samsung SDI battery suppliers at the Four Seasons Hotel in Seoul on the 26th to discuss ways to cooperate in the electric vehicle battery business. The event was held privately on the 26th after Governor Holcomb, who visited Korea for 2 days from the 25th, digested the official schedule to discuss ways to cooperate with Samsung SDI for the electric vehicle battery business. It is known that 40 to 50 partners participated. Details of what was discussed at the event with Governor Holcomb were not confirmed. According to the industry, he seems to have discussed ways to cooperate with domestic materials, parts, and equipment companies to build an electric vehicle battery supply chain in connection with the construction of a joint electric vehicle battery plant between Samsung SDI and Stellantis. Analysts suggest that he may have requested the establishment of a U.S. battery parts and material factory and equipment follow-up service after meeting with Samsung SDI partners. This is because cooperation in parts, materials, and equipment services is required from Korean companies in EV batteries. Prior to this, Governor Holcomb met with Samsung SDI CEO and management on the 25th. Samsung SDI and Stellantis will invest a total of 3.3 trillion won to build an electric vehicle battery plant in Kokomo, Indiana, with the goal of mass production in the first quarter of 2025. Samsung SDI plans to increase its investment by producing a 23 GWh electric vehicle battery at its factory, installing it in the Stellantis electric vehicle model, and expanding it to 33 GWh in line with the electric vehicle battery release schedule. LG Energy Solutions and SK On have built electric vehicle battery factories in the United States. LG Energy Solutions will build a third joint electric vehicle battery plant with GM of the United States and a joint electric vehicle battery plant with Stellantis. The U.S. is building a supply chain for electric vehicle batteries following semiconductors. Arizona is showing an active role in stabilizing the supply chain by establishing semiconductor and battery business sites in the country. Governor Holcomb met Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen on the 22nd, and it is known that he visited TSMC, the world's #1 semiconductor foundry company, in Taiwan. TSMC, like Samsung Electronics, is building a large-scale semiconductor plant in the U.S. by investing $12 billion. The Nihon Keizai reported on the 29th that Japanese automaker Honda has agreed to establish a vehicle battery plant in the United States with LG Energy Solutions, a Korean battery maker. The investment amount is expected to be in the hundreds of billions of yen, and construction is scheduled to start in 2023 and mass production is scheduled to begin in 2025. As the electric vehicle production base is expected to move rapidly to the United States in accordance with the enforcement of the Inflation Reduction Act, Honda is hastening to secure batteries for its own electric vehicles. This is the first time that Honda will set up its own electric vehicle battery plant. It seems to be working with a Korean company to establish a stable battery procurement. Honda plans to establish a joint venture with LG Energy and produce lithium-ion batteries in Ohio, USA, where Honda's main plant is located. According to Nikkei, LG Energy ranks second in the world after CATL of China, the world's #1 electric vehicle battery maker in terms of battery market share. LG Energy has set an annual production capacity of 30 GWh at a joint plant with GM and others, and it is known that it will become a plant of the same size as Honda. Honda has set a goal of making all new cars electric or fuel cell by 2040. In the US, in 2024, GM and LG Energy are planning to launch 2 electric vehicle models equipped with Altium, a vehicle battery jointly developed. In 2026, it plans to release an electric vehicle using a platform developed independently by Honda, and it is expected to be equipped with a battery produced jointly with LG Energy. Honda plans to produce about 800,000 electric vehicles in the United States by 2030, and is also considering establishing a production line exclusively for electric vehicles, Nikkei reported. The United States is the world's second largest automobile market after China, and for Honda, it accounts for more than 30% of global sales. The state of California, the largest automobile market in the United States, announced on the 25th that it would ban the sale of gasoline vehicles from 2035. There are tax deductions for electric vehicles that meet certain conditions, such as where the batteries are produced, as the U.S. Appropriation and Revenue Act was established. The basic strategy for automakers is to procure batteries from electric vehicle production sites to reduce costs. The United States is pursuing a policy of locking electric vehicle production in its own country. According to Nikkei, there seems to be an intention to form a partnership with a Korean company to reduce the risk of a supply chain cut off due to conflicts between the US and China. In the automotive battery market, China's CATL is currently leading, and in addition to LG Energy, 3 Korean batteries, SK Innovation and Samsung SDI, are following. As the US-China conflict intensifies, some US and European automakers view the expansion of battery procurement from Chinese companies as a risk, leading to an increase in orders from Korean companies as beneficiaries, Nikkei reported. By 2025, 12 battery factories in North America, including the 3 Korean companies, are expected to be operated. As a Japanese company, Panasonic is also actively investing in the United States, such as installing a new battery plant exclusively for electric vehicles in Kansas. As the number of unsold homes is rapidly increasing amid a nationwide decline in house prices, there is a series of requests from across the country to release them from the area subject to transaction adjustment. The economy is already bad and the outlook for future house prices is also negative, but it is said that the burden on local residents is increased due to regulations made when house prices soared. Currently, all areas subject to adjustment do not meet the designation requirement that the rate of increase in house prices exceeds the rate of inflation by 1.3 times. Since the government is in a position to consider deregulation, it is predicted that the regulations will be lifted soon, centered on small and medium-sized cities in the provinces. However, the government is contemplating the extent of the release, as it could stimulate speculative demand if the regulations are loosened prematurely. In the era of high prices, large mart buyers are struggling to offer their products even a little cheaper than their competitors. This is because the 10-1 war in the distribution industry is intensifying as the CEOs of the 3 large supermarkets risk their pride and declare competition for the lowest price. Among the industry's elite buyers, there is a sense of competition that they have to sell even if it is 10-1 cheaper than others. The reason buyers are competing so fiercely is a sense of crisis that hypermarkets, whose main weapon is cheap, should no longer succumb to inflation. Hypermarkets that mainly sell daily necessities are known to be relatively less affected by inflation than other businesses. However, a common concern in the industry is that consumers may close their wallets if prices rise further. It is also a strategy to regain an edge in competition with e-commerce, which has grown into distribution giants such as Coupang and Curly. CEOs are also urging them not to lose to their competitors and actively jump into the competition for the lowest price. An official from the distribution industry explained that, in order to win the 10-1 war, the buyer's competency is the most important. Among virtual humans, Ms. Sen, who is evaluated to be the most similar to humans, has been selected as an ambassador for trucks at an automobile company. Tata Daewoo commercial vehicle put forward the virtual human Ms. Sen to communicate with the MZ generation truckers. Most of all, Ms. Sen is becoming a hot topic because of her human-like appearance. Tata Daewoo commercial vehicle announced that it has opened an Instagram to communicate with the MZ generation, who are interested in cars, and has appointed a virtual human Ms. Sen as the Instagram editor. Ms. Sen is the first virtual human in the automobile industry. With the concept of a woman in her early 30s from studying abroad in the UK, she is in charge of the creative director of Tata Daewoo. Tata Daewoo introduced Ms. Sen as a model that will change the company's image. At the new car presentation held in a virtual space at the time, Ms. Sen was evaluated to have raised the image of a new car by showing off her fluent English and professional knowledge. In response, Tata Daewoo announced that it would develop additional content using Ms. Sen in the future. The strategy is to add a bright and sophisticated image to the commercial vehicle lineup. It is part of this that Tata Daewoo put Ms. Sen at the fore this time. The intention is to strengthen communication with the MZ generation by introducing a female virtual human with a friendly image. Recently, the scope of activities of virtual humans is expanding in all directions. It is entering the fashion and beauty industry as well as the automobile industry. In addition to Ms. Sen, Giant Steps virtual human Lee Sol appeared as a publicity model for Mercedes's electric SUV the new EQB, and Volvo also drew attention by introducing a virtual human in car promotions. In addition, Ssangyong Motor also used Lucy, a virtual human of Lottie Home Shopping, at the new Car Torres event. The Seoul Metropolitan Government announced on the 29th that, as a result of a comprehensive and three-dimensional analysis of the lives of single-person households by combining the Population and Household Statistics Survey and SK Telecom's communication data, there are significant differences in lifestyle according to age, region, and gender. While single-person households of the young generation are concentrated in specific administrative dongs with many colleges and businesses, the middle-aged people aged 40 to 50 have a higher density in low-rise residential areas, and those in their 60s and older have high density in Gangbuk, Dobong, and Naeungu. Among single-person households, who do not communicate well through text or phone calls, the proportion of males was higher than that of females across all age groups. It was analyzed that the low-income elderly single-person households are more likely to be socially isolated because the distance traveled, the number of outings, and the number of calls are significantly lower than those of other groups. Areas with the highest usage of delivery apps were Gwanak, Gangnam, and Gwangjin, in that order, and single-person households were using delivery services a lot, while video and broadcasting services such as YouTube were used the most in their 30s. The Seoul Metropolitan Government, in cooperation with SK Telecom and the University of Seoul, developed and published data on the life of Seoul citizens by combining and analyzing the pseudonym data of 3 million people. It will be released for the first time through the Seoul Open Data Plaza, and the updated data will be continuously updated on a monthly basis. The biggest factor is that it is possible to more closely analyze the living characteristics of single-person households through information that can be confirmed through communication data, such as the number of calls and text messages, the number of days of using video services such as YouTube and Netflix, the number of travels and distances, and the number of days of using the delivery service. Characteristic. The Seoul Metropolitan Government plans to actively utilize the data on citizens' lives in Seoul to establish and implement practical policies to improve the quality of life of the socially disadvantaged, such as single-person households, in connection with the 4 safety policies for single-person households announced earlier this year. As of June, the number of single-person households estimated by the Seoul Metropolitan Government through the data of Seoul citizens was 1,534,000. Although the timing is different, there were about 143,000 more households than the number of single-person households identified in the census of the National Statistical Office. There was also a difference in the rankings of administrative dongs with many single-person households and administrative dongs with the highest number of single-person households relative to the population. The density of single-person households differed according to the generation. Young single-person households tended to live near universities or companies. The middle-aged group had high density in low-rise residential areas, and the elderly group had higher density in Gangbuk, Dobong, and Naeungu, respectively. In particular, although the number of single-person households itself was not large in the city center, the ratio of single-person households to the population was high. Those in their 30s used video and broadcasting services such as YouTube the most. By region, Sillimdong, Gwanak-gu, Yeoksamdong, Gangnam-gu, and Nonhyeon-dong, Gangnam-gu were the highest in the densely populated areas of single-person households. It was analyzed that among single-person households with low communication inferred based on the amount of text messages and calls, males in all age groups under the age of 69 had less communication than females. In particular, it was estimated that communication-based communication among middle-aged and older single-person households living in downtown areas such as Myeongdong, Yeoljerodong, and Hohyeon-dong was particularly low. In the case of the elderly single-person households belonging to the low-income group in Seoul, it was found that the distance traveled on holidays, the number of people making phone calls, and the number of outings on holidays were much lower than other groups, indicating that social contact was insufficient. A group of people who ran a pyramid-type voice phishing organization and stole more than 3 billion won to China were caught by the police. The Yongsan police station in Seoul announced on the 29th that it had arrested 34 people, including cash collectors, messengers, and money changers made up of Koreans or Chinese, and detained 13 of them, including a Chinese general, on charges of joining a criminal group and fraud. They are accused of stealing 3.2 billion won from 53 people under the guise of financial institutions or investigative agencies from February to July and sending them to China. According to the police, the 2 domestic leaders frequently recruited subordinate members of each stage under the direction of the Chinese foreign leader. They collected cash from the victim face-to-face and delivered it to a money changer to transfer it to a Chinese account managed by the Chinese general manager. The victims suffered an average of 60 million won in damages. Some victims lost as much as 490 million won. Police said that during the arrest process, 180 million won was recovered and returned to the victims. The Chinese general in China has not yet been arrested. After receiving an arrest warrant, the police plan to repatriate the Chinese general to the country through Red Wanted and international coordinated investigations. A police official said that the recruitment of part-time jobs that guarantee high profits is highly likely to be a recruitment for voice phishing collection books. Public institutions do not ask for financial or personal information under any circumstances, so if you receive such a call, please hang up and report it immediately. A wealthy woman in her 50s was found dead in the bathtub of her home in Osaka, Japan last year, and her adopted son was arrested after a year on charges of murdering his adoptive mother. According to local media such as the Japanese Yomiuri Shimbun and Fuji News Network on the 29th, the police arrested Takai Rin on the 25th for the murder of Naoko Takai. The incident initially appeared to be an accident, but the police confirmed that it was a murder case in February. In particular, the police regarded Naoko's adopted son, Rin, as suspicious. Rin lost her job about a month before the incident, but she has lived a luxurious life living in a luxury apartment in downtown Tokyo. Lin's social media has been posted several times of her going to high-end restaurants dressed in expensive imported cars and luxury brand products. Even a month after his adoptive mother died, he posted on social media a trip to Mount Fuji in Lamborghini's Murcielago, a multi-million-dollar supercar. Lin's suspicious behavior was revealed during the insurance claim application process. As a result of police investigations, Lin worked for a foreign life insurance company after graduating from college. In order to improve his performance, Lin, who caused problems such as proceeding with other insurance contracts without customer consent, left the company he was working at in June 2020 and re-employed with another insurance company. Lin, who caused similar contract problems even after the job change, had to leave the company around April of last year. I also met Naoko for the first time while working in insurance. In the future, Naoko had two insurances with 50 million yen and 100 million yen. Rin was adopted by Mr. Naoko in February of the year of the incident, and in May of the same year, Rin changed the beneficiary of an insurance contract with Naoko for 5,000 yen in the amount of insurance to herself. After that, Lin tried to change the payee of the 100 million yen insurance contract the very next day after the incident, but the insurance company withheld the payment because the circumstances of the change were unclear. In the end, Rin did not receive the insurance money in Naoko-san's name, but she inherited an inheritance worth about 100 million yen. Even under these circumstances, the reason Lin was arrested a year later is because it took the police a long time to obtain evidence. Lin claimed he was at his home in Tokyo on the day of the incident. It was confirmed that Rin's cell phone was also placed in her Tokyo home. On the day of the incident, the police scoured the CCTV footage of the route from Rin's house to Naoko's house. In the process, we caught the suspicious appearance of a man disguised as a woman. The man who looked to be Rin changed his clothes several times that day, and was also caught visiting Naoko's house. The police believed that Lin had committed the crime after her life became destitute after her job loss and sent Lin to the prosecution on the 27th. Lin is currently exercising her right to remain silent regarding the incident. It is understood that China held a high-intensity armed demonstration around Taiwan on the 26th by mobilizing a total of 35 military aircraft and 8 warships against the U.S. Senator's visit to Taiwan. According to the Taiwan Central News Agency, citing the Taiwan Ministry of Defense, 35 Chinese military aircraft and 8 warships were active in the sea and airspace around Taiwan from midnight to 5 p.m. on the 26th. Of these, 15 fighters including Su-38s, J-11-3s and J-16-4s crossed the midline of the Taiwan Strait, and J-310 fighters entered the Air Defense Identification Zone in southwestern Taiwan. The protests took place the day after U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn, a Republican from the U.S., visited Taiwan. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry urged the United States to immediately suspend all forms of official exchanges with Taiwan, warning that China will continue to take strong measures to resolutely safeguard the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Reuters reported on the 27th that 2 U.S. Navy missile cruisers, Chancellorsville and Antietam, were passing through international waters in the Taiwan Strait, citing unnamed U.S. military officials. It is the first time since Pelosi's visit to Taiwan that U.S. forces have conducted a freedom of navigation operation in the Taiwan Strait. Kurt Campbell, Indo-Pacific coordinator at the White House National Security Council, criticized China for using Pelosi's visit to Taiwan as an excuse to jeopardize peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and change the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. Made clear his intention to continue. He said the United States would fly, sail and operate anywhere consistent with its long-standing promise of freedom of navigation under international law, including the passage of aircraft and ships in the Taiwan Strait within weeks. The Taiwan Strait midline was declared by the United States Air Force General Benjamin Davis in 1955 to prevent military clashes after the signing of the Mutual Defense Treaty between the United States and Taiwan in December 1954. The United States is emphasizing its position that there is no problem under international law for its warships to pass through the Taiwan Strait. In the past, U.S. warships or military aircraft only passed through the Taiwan Strait only once a year, but in recent years, with the increasing trend of China's military activity in the South China Sea, it has become an almost monthly event. The destroyer Benford last month, the P-8A anti-submarine patrol aircraft in June, the Aegis Sampson in April, the destroyer Ralph Johnson in February and the Aegis Dewey in January each passed through the Taiwan Strait. China has not yet responded to the US cruiser's voyage through the Taiwan Strait, but it is expected to strongly protest. China claims that Taiwan is part of Chinese territory and that the Taiwan Strait belongs to its exclusive economic zone, which limits the activities of foreign warships. Thank you for watching today. Please like and subscribe.